Hello and welcome. You're with Tea Time with me, Shaili Chopra. We're at the Karma Lakelands. This is at the outskirts of New Delhi. It's quite a fine morning, however, it's the thick of winter. So while you can see the sun, you quite can't feel the chilly breeze. My guest has decided to brave it. The man who's looking after Intel in India is out there dealing with the crisis and with the cold. What lies ahead for the technology spend and how is the rest of the world looking at India and its Intel inside? That's the focus on Tea Time this time.
On the show this week, we have our Sivakumar, MD of Sales and Marketing of Intel South Asia.
We've really not yet taken advantage of technology in this country. In terms of education and healthcare and all of that stuff. There's no other way to go. I think it's really technology.
In news, Tiger Woods edges Zach Johnson to win the Chevron World Challenge.
W for Tiger Woods for the first time.
And golfing tips with Jesse Grewal.
So hitting it in the middle or understanding the on-center contact is one of the most important parts of putting.
Nice shot. Morning, Siva.
Good morning. How are
Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
That was a good start.
Yeah.
It's a good start to the morning, but I say it's bad times for the market, whether it's technology or the global crisis.
Yeah. It is, the one thing that you realize when you are in business long enough is that ultimately things are all cyclical, right? And the dynamics of global business, you're not confined by any single cyclicality. Yeah, there is crisis concerns various things in certain markets.
Yeah.
Other markets are set for takeoff. And
how many such cycles have you seen? Being at Intel, I'm sure you've seen hiccups of innovation, tough market movements, high competition. So the cycle changes every time for different reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the semiconductor business in its own right is a cyclical business, right? That goes through up and down over the course of every 3 to 4 years. But in a market sense, I've probably seen 4 major ones in my time at Intel. I've been there about 24 years. The first couple of times you are early enough in the industry, you're young enough, you don't really understand what's going on. And then over time it all sort of settles down and you learn how to look at it, not get too carried away by either the upswing or the downswing.
Which part of the cycle are you? Are you right at the bottom of the U, or is there a sort of a movement towards getting towards,
There are concerns in certain parts of the global economy, right? Clearly Europe, no surprises there.
Yeah.
But when you look at Asia or you look at Latin America or Africa, these are all markets that are tremendously underpenetrated on every technology metric. So for us, when you have the medium to long-term outlook on where business is likely to go, most of it just sort of looks like upside, right? You do have to deal with the short-term issues as you're conducting day-to-day business.
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily always mean how you think about it in the medium to long term.
What is your biggest challenge in the short term, though?
I think in the short term, it's often surprises, right? It's always surprises.
You mean from a global economic point of view?
Global economic point of view or force majeure. I mean, things that happen, acts of God that you don't necessarily measure.
Why would you be so worried about a force majeure situation at Intel?
For a variety of reasons. Things like that could impact our ability to produce. Ultimately, we are a producer. We are a company that has very, very large factory networks around the world. It's a supply chain that is super optimized for producing products and shipping them on a very, very tight window.
That's right.
And then we have a very large set of downstream customers that are taking our technology, building them into systems, sending them around the globe. And if there is a hiccup, we had a recent hiccup in Thailand, right?
Yes,
the floods.
the floods.
And that certainly caused a certain disruption in that whole global process. And these are things for which you have a certain set of backstops. So I think those kinds of things tend to be the typical short-term issues that you have to deal with.
Okay.
But our view is always, what do you need to do the medium to long term, because those are the bets we have to make.
That's right. Key bets that they have to make, but more importantly, when the times are tough, how do they get back to the fairway? That's what we're going to discuss ahead on the course. Intel is a global business.
Yeah.
It sort of looks at its supply chain, its markets on a more global way. How does India fit in that story, and where does India lie in Intel's larger plans?
We've been doing business in India for over 20 years, right? So, one might wonder what business in technology existed in India in 1988, right? So there is a view to these kinds of markets that the leaders of our business have, internalized a long time ago.
Yeah.
Now, 20 years later, or 20 plus years later, India is one of the fastest growing markets for us globally. It'll continue with that for a long period of time. And one can very easily get distracted by all of the day-to-day observances you have. When you go around India, some of the challenges that you have, all of the often repeated cliches about India, all of those things can be distracting. But in the larger measure, what you want to really focus on is what are those few things that you need to do to continue to drive the growth of this market, which is in a secular fashion happening anyway.
Right.
What is the role of a catalyst that you can play, right? That is sort of how we look at it.
That's true. How is Intel though going to expand? I mean, use of technology is one piece, which is really the potential of this market. But there's large number of players who will make it up in all. What is the kind of infrastructure Intel has set up in India?
We have a very substantial design center in Bangalore. We do some of the most advanced work there. That is a very calibrated strategy that we had, that we wanted to attract the type of talent that really wants to come in there and do the most advanced work for any design center in the country.
Okay.
We started about a dozen years back. And over that period of time, we built a pretty unique infrastructure for doing, chip design in Bangalore. Of course, we do software and various other things.
Yeah.
Substantial. We got about 3,000 people doing that work.
Okay.
So
that's sort of an innovation hub.
That's an innovation research hub.
Yeah.
And for doing our business, gradually over 2 decades, the footprint of where technology is today available might actually surprise you. You can go to small towns of 10,000 people, way out in the boonies somewhere,
right,
where you'd actually find outlets where people are selling laptops and so on.
Sure.
And those are not things that we would have seen even 5 years back in India. So I think there is a very dramatic shift that's happening in both the access and the desire and the need to actually use technology. And we are seeing that, continuously grow very rapidly in the country.
So how does it work for you and the global headquarters? Does it work, in terms of calibrating and moving back on the fairway when things are not in shape? Is it sort of a supply demand that contracts and expands your kind of work back here?
I think if you link back to, the real needs that you have in a market like this, it is ultimately, driven by what is the demand that you can create in the marketplace,
sure,
right? I think our ability to supply to the demand in the broad aggregate exists. I don't think that is an issue for us. It is really what is the more compelling new usages that you create for technology. How did it adapt itself to the environment that you're in?
Yeah.
I think that idea of adaptation is very, very critical here.
Okay.
I think, 15 years back, you may have seen people bring what may have been thought of as, N-1 technology. Those sorts of things don't work. You do have to bring the latest technology to market. But how you then transform it into solving problems here, I think becomes more critical.
Oh, that's interesting, especially since India is known as a market that tends to jump revolutions, because by the time things change in the rest of the world, we decide to skip everything in the middle and reach for the very latest. We're talking about that, but ahead.
We have really not yet taken advantage of technology in this country. In terms of education and healthcare and all of that stuff. There's no other way to go. I think it's really technology.